What is going on, everybody? Welcome back. Welcome to a deep dive into my 27th ranked 2020 New York Jets. Before we hop in, a quick reminder, please do hit that like button down below. Really helps me out, helps this video get more views, support the channel, grow the channel, all that stuff. If you want to help out, that's how you do it right there. So appreciate you in advance. So let's hop in here to this New York Jets team, who we are sitting here yet another year with this team with tampered expectations, kind of poking fun at the coaching and culture here. It's just a theme here. This is not the best run organization in the league, to say the least. They've made some nice steps in the right direction. I think actually with Greg Williams as the defensive coordinator here, they've got at least one really good coach. Adam Gase has a ton to prove this year. But then I also like what they've done in the front office. I think they had a really good offseason. This was Joe Douglas, the new general manager. It was his first offseason. I think he did a really good job, and we got a lot of new pieces on this roster to talk about. But ultimately, I think we'd all be kidding ourselves to say that this season doesn't completely hinge on what Sam Darnold shows us this year. So we're going to talk about Darnold in depth. We're going to do our little roster review as we always do. While we do that, you will be looking at my own custom Madden roster. So yes, it is a video game, but do keep in mind it's my own ratings, and it accurately shows how I perceive each player in a nice copyright-free graphic that I get to use. Then we're going to take a look at the schedule, talk about this team's Vegas over-under, and my win total expectations for this team. So without further ado, let's hop into that roster review, starting with that also pivotal quarterback position in Sam Darnold that's going to come in ranked 22nd here. And this ranking is a healthy balance of the promise of Sam Darnold and the frankly elite upside that was a big reason I loved Sam Darnold coming out, and I do tend to still believe in him, but there are plenty of negatives that we are also going to talk about with Sam Darnold. He just might be the most polarizing quarterback here for the entire NFL in the 2020 season, and certainly a guy that we just don't know right now what we're going to get. Especially with this player specifically, who has been 1 week, it's like against the Dallas Cowboys, where he looks like a top 10 player in the NFL. Throwing the ball with accuracy, manipulating the pocket, extending plays, playing within rhythm, limiting mistakes, and then the next week he looks like he's seeing ghosts, literally saying that he's seeing ghosts against the New England Patriots. Now, there's plenty of reasons why he's gotten off to a really slow start, and those are reasons that if you want to be optimistic about Sam Darnold and believe in the talent and believe in the human and his work ethic, they're good reasons to say he can certainly get this thing back on track. Last year was a fluky start. His season got completely thrown off due to mono. He's had injuries. He's been surrounded by pretty hot garbage and chaos here with the Jets. Now, is that part of it going to change this year with this team, with these receivers and Adam Gase again? It does seem pretty unlikely. So really going to hinge on what Sam Darnold can do, and he's going to have to pull out a really special effort to get a much more consensus belief in Sam Darnold. So again, that 22nd ranking is a tough blend of the upside, but also like acknowledging this guy is a very boom or bust player at the moment. Yes, he has all of the makings of what could be an elite quarterback. Accuracy, great arm talent that allows him to put the ball wherever he wants, even if he's off platform. One of my favorite things about Sam Darnold is his pocket presence and the ability to sense pressure and use his feet to manipulate the pocket and extend plays. He's got all of that, but the processor, the post-snap processor, the decision-making, so far to go if you want to see that consistently, I don't even want to say elite, just like a consistent starting caliber quarterback. We need to see that from Sam Darnold. Otherwise, this year, like if it doesn't happen this year, we might start just, everyone start looking at him as Jameis Winston, as this weekly boomer bust option. And we're definitely going to start talking about, are the Jets going to move on from Sam Darnold at some point? So, that's out of the way. I do lean on the side of believing in Sam Darnold, but there's no way for me to sit here and just tell you what's going to happen. Nobody knows. The upside is outstanding. I'll certainly be pulling for him to get there, but I can't sit here and project him to automatically reach it, even if I do deep down believe that he will get there. Then behind him, you get Joe Flacco. I don't really want to spend any time talking about Joe Flacco. He's now in his rightful position as a backup here. Hopefully he can take on a mentor position for Sam Darnold. David Fales, Mike White, I don't see them making the team. They draft James Morgan in the 4th round, which I thought was pound for pound, like, quite frankly, maybe the worst pick in the entire draft. I very well just might not have seen it from him. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and tell you that I dove into James Morgan tape. And Joe Douglas, a very good scout, so very well could have seen something I didn't. But personally, James Morgan, I evaluated almost 500 players this year. I think it was like 493. James Morgan ranked, I think, 487th and was one of 5 players that had a non-NFL caliber grade. So to me, I thought he was a camp arm. Yes, he's got the arm strength, but I saw literally nothing that told me he could be an NFL caliber player. I didn't get the pick. Guess we'll wait and see on that one. So 22nd for the quarterback position. Let's talk about the running backs here. Pretty basic. They got Le'Veon Bell on a massive contract, but he's still very good. I think we saw some of that regression from Le'Veon that many of us expected here. Coming over from Pittsburgh behind an excellent scheme and offensive line, just wasn't all in place. I think where we did see the old Le'Veon Bell a lot of times was dropping the ball off to him in the flat, something he's always been good at, making a guy or two miss, creating some extra third downs. We'd like to see more of it in year 2 here for the Jets. He picked up some really tough first downs on 3rd and short as well, but at this point, I don't even really think I would say Le'Veon Bell is a top 10 back. We've seen some other guys kind of enter that rank, and Le'Veon he's never had that elite explosiveness, and I think he's lost just a little bit of that special vision and constantly making that first guy miss. He just didn't do it, and I don't know if I'm expecting him to do it again, but he is still a very good back. I would say a top 12 to 15 back in this league. The depth here is just not very inspiring. It's fine. You got some NFL caliber players here. Obviously, Frank Gore. He is what he is at his age. He's a smart guy. You can rely on him. He does everything at an average level. That's basically it. I would say maybe his power between the tackles is slightly above average, but you do give up some of that burst. So he's fine. He's a good backup running back that is going to be able to do everything. Michael Pirine, kind of the same, like a younger version of what we just described in Frank Gore. I actually didn't hate Pirine coming out of Florida. It wasn't the worst pick in the 4th round either. He actually has some similarities to Le'Veon Bell in that he's not an uber explosive running back or athlete, but can make guys miss, can catch the ball out of the backfield, has decent vision, holds onto the ball well, doesn't fumble. Like, he's a solid backup. Then Trenton Cannon's kind of that 3rd down back, scat back type. You got Josh Adams and Kenneth Dixon going to kind of vie for roster spots here as well. So it's actually a pretty decent, deep group of running backs. You're not going to necessarily have that fear factor unless Le'Veon Bell can get back to his old self, which seems unlikely. But they are going to rank 13th, so a pretty respectable ranking at that running back spot. Now let's talk about this wide receiver room that is just a disaster at the moment. So they are going to rank 30th for wide receiver. Really, their only like good wide receiver, not even great, but just like good quality starter is Jamison Crowder, who was just short of phenomenal out of the slot last year. Him and Darnold had a great repertoire together. I think year 2 together, it's going to look even better. A lot of that sort of when the play broke down, Crowder is just so smart. He knows how to get where Darnold's going to look for. So they have a great chemistry, and I do like that a lot. But other than him, you're looking at a ton of question marks. So you do still have Quincy Enunwa here. He's currently on the PUP list. He got a massive injury like the second they gave him a big contract. Hopefully he can get healthy, and if he can, you're definitely going to exceed this 30th ranking because he's a good player. Now the problem is him, Crowder, and then Le'Veon Bell, who's honestly like your 3rd best pass catching target here, they're all short to intermediate targets. Now, If you can get Enunwa healthy, you're going to have a nice combination of skill sets there where you've got kind of the physical, almost oversized slot guy in Enunwa. Crowder, again, a guy that plays well out of the slot, but he's more of that shifty, get open early kind of guy. And then Le'Veon, we know what he brings out of the backfield as a receiver. But as far as the vertical outside threats here, two major question marks, but you do have some upside. Denzel Mims, a second-round pick. A lot of people loved him as like a top 5 receiver in this class, a surefire first-round pick. I had him much closer to where he ended up getting drafted as sort of a top 60 to 80 player in this class. Now, he's got good speed and size on the outside. Now, the thing is with Denzel Mims is I just didn't see the route running, the release, the separation. I did see the great contested catchability, but he also struggled with drops, not unlike Brashad Perriman, who is here, who's going to compete on the outside as well. And if Enunwa can't get healthy, we are probably going to see a lot of Mims and Perriman. Now, Perriman, I was really starting to buy into him at the end of last season. He shaved off his like ugly dreads, like he was starting to bald and just kind of looked like a scrub. He was playing like a scrub, a first-round pick for the Ravens in, I want to say 2015, just never reached any sort of potential. But I was starting to buy into him. Like he was showing some badass to him. Kind of like going up over guys like Moss and dudes, was really relevant for that Bucs team, and paired nicely with Jameis and his kind of aggressive vertical mentality could work well here with Sam Darnold. So Brashad Perriman is a wild card for this offense. If he can play like he did in the final 6 weeks of last season, and if Denzel Mims, who to me is a bit of a boomer bust, physical, deep ball, kind of, I don't even want to say possession receiver, but just big-bodied outside wide receiver, like you could really reach some upside here that is not reflected in that 30th ranking. But just major question marks between Perriman, Mims, and Enunwa that are going to drag this ranking down. And then they do pick up Josh Doctson, who has really had a hard time getting on the field. When he's been on the field, he hasn't been bad. He was a first-round pick for the Redskins in 2017, I want to say. If he can stay healthy, yet another question mark here that could make an impact for this team. So I like those moves that they're making, kind of reclamation projects. Guys like Perriman and Doctson, who they hope that Darnold can kind of elevate these guys if they can all be healthy and make it work. Josh Malone, another guy that did not make a deep Bengals receiving core, gets released. He's a 6'4" speedy outside threat, not entirely unlike Denzel Mims, Brashad Perriman. They clearly are trying to find that replacement for Robbie Anderson here as that go ball threat on the outside. Then you have Braxton Berrios, a slot depth piece. I still think he can play. Now it's going to take something happening to Jamison Crowder for him to get on the field, but a lot of people thought he was going to be the next Julian Edelman, who was drafted by the Patriots in the 7th round. So keep an eye on him. You got Jahu Chesson. Same sort of story, like an earlier draft pick for the Seahawks, just hasn't been given that opportunity. Vincent Smith showed some flashes last year as a speedier outside threat, and then even Lawrence Cager was a good undrafted signing here. He was the one guy that Jake Fromm was able to really connect with earlier on in that season, a 6'5", like big-bodied red zone target, but an interesting player. I actually kind of liked his tape. Just a transfer that came into Georgia to play with Fromm, only played a few games before his season was cut short. So could be a guy that if he finished the season might have snuck into that sort of 6th round range, just in a deep wide receiver class, did get pushed down. Reminds me a little bit of Alan Lazard, who went undrafted a few years ago. So do keep an eye on Lawrence Cager. Then the tight end room, very underwhelming. So Christopher Herndon has shown a ton of flashes, and I do think he can be a starting caliber tight end. He's somewhat like we talked about with Ian Thomas and the Panthers. Kind of a guy that can do a little bit of everything. Good run after catch guy, not a terrible blocker, good contested catch guy, decent route runner, just not a master of anything. You got the veteran Ryan Griffin, kind of a career number 2 tight end Daniel Brown, a bit of a raw mismatch problem. He's shown a lot of flashes. He's got that size, speed you look for at tight end, just doesn't have everything else. So he's kind of bounced around the league, made some moments happen. Then you got Ross Travis, a former basketball player, who's trying it again here. I think he's been on 3 teams in 3 years. Maybe something clicks here. We'll see. But yeah, the tight end room it's okay. There's just nothing too glowing there. So the receiver ranking, I also got to mention Trayvon Wesco is kind of the fullback, H-back. He's not the worst player. He's fine. But yeah, man, that receiving core is going to rank 30th. That counts the tight ends and the running backs. It's just a lot of question marks. I like some of the moves they've made. I think that they've attacked players with the right skill sets in the right spots. It's just a matter of, do guys like Mims, Perriman, even guys like Doxson, Malone come into their own here. And then the offensive line, and this has been a disaster. This is a big reason that Sam Darnold hasn't had much of a chance here for the Jets, along with other reasons. But you hope here that Joe Douglas has kind of come in and with his first full offseason fixed this thing. And I'm sorry if you're tired of me talking about this, but to me there's three types of offensive lines. There's lines that get in your way and prohibit you from doing what you want to do. There's average lines that just allow you to do what you want to do. And then there's good lines that help you do what you want to do. This offensive line is not going to be the latter. They're not going to help this team do what they want to do. But can they go, for the first time in Darnold's career, from an offensive line that actively hurts this team to just an offensive line that gets in people's way and allows this team to execute their offense and do what they want to do, and let Darnold have a little bit of time to think out there, because we know his processor is not elite. So a ton of moving pieces on this offensive line. At left tackle, you're going to have Mekhi Becton, who was a love child of the NFL draft. I liked him. I didn't love him. I did have a first-round grade on him, but a lot of people thought he was the best tackle in this class, this generational tackle prospect, that getting him at 11 was this total steal. I had him as, I think, the 15th player in this class, so it was good value, but for me, he's got a lot of problems. I think they see the size and assume he's going to be this great run blocker. To me, I thought he was actually a really bad run blocker. His get-off was not what I wanted to see. Everyone talks about how great of an athlete he is. I didn't see it in his run blocking get-off. His technique was a mess. All he did was try to use his strength to just throw guys to the side, which led to a fantastic highlight tape. But using that effectively at the NFL level, that's just not going to work. You got to get your hands inside. You got to run your feet. You got to get your head across. He doesn't do that. So he's got to learn that from a run blocking standpoint. And that's an unpopular opinion, to say that Mekhi Becton is actually a bad run blocker, because most people just say his pass blocking technique is bad and he's raw, and that's really not my evaluation of him. He's got good footwork. He can land his punches. He's got a very high floor as a pass blocker. That's actually what I like the most about Mekhi Becton. But there were some really kind of mental aspects when it comes to blitz recognition and not allowing guys to get the inside simply off of mental mishaps, not anything to do with his technique or anything, that he just needs to become a smarter football player. So that's where I had questions about his pass blocking. But regardless, we're going really far into Mekhi Becton. He's going to be a massive upgrade, quite literally, at left tackle. Then everywhere else, other than I would say probably center and right guard, are up in the air. Left guard is going to be an open competition between Alex Lewis. Does George Fant play guard? Cameron Clark, a fourth-round pick, who's kind of this raw athlete that might project better as a guard in the NFL. He played tackle at Charlotte. Even a guy like Shuma Edoga, who's been a tackle here. And then Greg Van Roten was actually a pretty decent signing, who played well for Carolina last year. I would project that Greg Van Roten is the best player at left guard among those names that we just named. But who knows who's going to emerge at left guard. All these guys have a certain amount of promise. I do like what they're doing. It resembles what their division counterpart, the Buffalo Bills, did, and just throw a bunch of darts at different talented players and let them go to battle and see who emerges. And I think that's a really good strategy, maybe not to establish some elite offensive line, but to get a unit like Buffalo did out of the cellar and more towards that average group. So center should be Connor McGovern, who got a sizable contract here, was a solid center for Denver last year, so hopefully that's going to be an upgrade. They tried Ryan Khalil at center last year, and at his age, it just didn't work. So hoping for an upgraded center there. And then at right guard, Brian Winter's a good player, and I actually think if this offensive line can solidify itself, I think Winters could actually kind of reestablish himself as a really quality guard, like a top 15, top 20 guy. Maybe I just have a soft spot in my heart for Brian Winters because when I started this channel, he was one of the first guys I noticed when I started watching offensive linemen, and he's just like a really good, like, he does everything really well. He moves well, he's strong, he's smart. So I like Brian Winters. I think there's a reason he's stuck in here because they know he's actually kind of a baller. Has just been kind of hidden by all the garbage that's been around him. But right tackle is a freaking, like, glaring weakness right now. My guess is it'll be George Fant because they gave him a ton of money. They gave him 3 years, $30 million, but he's not worth that. He's played more tight end for the Seattle Seahawks, whose right tackle is equally as bad, and couldn't win that job outright. So hopefully he's a great athlete. Hopefully he can figure it out, but that's asking a lot. You got Chuma Edoga, 3rd-round pick last year. He's not ready. Neither is Cameron Clark. So that right tackle spot, it's kind of like what we talked about when the Jags paid Nick Foles. Like, giving a guy a bunch of money isn't going to make him play up to that contract. And that's what I think about the George Fant contract. There's some promise there and some upside, but man, he has not shown that at the NFL level. But maybe Joe Douglas knows something we don't. So the offensive line as a whole ranks 28th. I like the strategy they've had here. It's just a matter of, can these guys figure it out together? And you really hope that they can. So the offense as a whole ranks 30th. Now, there's some upside in there. Sam Darnold alone has crazy upside. These receivers that could come together. This offensive line could come together. It's a huge year for Adam Gase and Darnold to kind of prove that they can have some continuity on this offense. But it's just really hard for me to sit here and predict that that's going to happen based on what we've seen to this point from this organization. And the offensive coaching culture is going to rank 29th, which is very low. And I think that's pretty justified. Adam Gase I've kind of stood my neck out for him in the past, saying he's not the worst. And I would still say he's not the worst coach in the league, which I think some people would say. But he's definitely up there or down there, whatever way you want to look at it. But then the defensive side of the ball, it's going to get much more optimistic here. There's much more solidity here. And a large part of that is not just that there's a lot more talent on this side of the ball, but Greg Williams gets a bad rap because of the Bounty Gate thing, and rightfully so. Like, that was awful. They never should have done that, but he's one of the best defensive coordinators in the league. Like, I truly believe that. He is just a hard ass. He knows what he's talking about. He even converted his scheme here to a 3-4 defense and made it work last year. So he's versatile. Like, I am a big Greg Williams fan, especially the job he's done here with the Jets, and I honestly think the Browns screwed up letting him go. So I am going to show my respect for Greg Williams, who obviously probably is never going to get a head coaching job, even though he claims that he's got plenty of offers on the table. He just doesn't want to take them. But man, I think he is a phenomenal defensive coordinator who kind of overshadows some of the, I guess, rough edges that we get from the Adam Gase coaching culture here. But I like what we got in Greg Williams. So let's go through this defense that is going to rank 17th. They've got some holes, but they got some real strengths as well. So the run defense is going to rank extremely high. 4th for run defense. Steve McClendon, one of the better run defending nose tackles. You got Quinnen Williams. He's just got to figure it out. Like, he was the 3rd overall pick in the 2019 draft. Other than being a one-year wonder for Alabama, he was basically a perfect prospect. Like, his technique as a pass rusher was outstanding. He checked all the athleticism boxes. Injury was great. His character seemed off the chains. Like, I'm surprised that he had such a bad rookie season and then got in trouble for, like, bringing a gun into an airport. Like, just a stupid mistake. I do believe he will turn this thing around, but there are question marks now with Quinnen Williams. But you got Henry Anderson, who's a really good kind of 4-tech, big-bodied sort of D-end. Lorenzo Fatukasi, a name you got to know, a 6th-round pick in 2018, was a big reason this team felt comfortable, I think, trading away Leonard Williams, because this guy balled the heck out last year. You got Nathan Shepard, a 3rd-round pick in 2018 as well that can play. Tons of depth on the interior that are going to play hard for this defense and did last year. I imagine that'll repeat this year. And then they have some really nice big-bodied edge guys here as well. Kyle Phillips, Jordan Willis. Jordan Jenkins is phenomenal against the run. Terrell Basham. It's not the best pass rushing group, but you want to talk about holding your gap and defending the run. And as Greg Williams likes to say, putting your tackles in the C gap, like they're going to do that for Greg Williams. And then the linebackers. This is one of the best, actually I would say the best run-stopping group of linebackers. There's some questions when you want to talk about coverage with CJ Mosley and Avery Williamson, who was out last year on a torn ACL. CJ Mosley didn't play much last year either. So getting them back in, you very well could have the best run defense in the NFL. Now, unfortunately, that doesn't count for much in 2020 in a passing league, but it is impressive for what it's worth. But let's talk about the much more important pass rush. That is going to be the reason this defense ranks just 17th, despite a lot of the good things we have to say about them. So let's start with the edge group. It's just a mishmash of sort of reclamation projects and Jordan Jenkins. I think this was an excellent job by Joe Douglas. I mean, some of the guys they brought in were really high draft pedigree guys. Guys like Terrell Basham, Jordan Willis, great scouting in Kyle Willips, who was an undrafted pickup here who really played well, more in run defense than as a pass rusher, but a nice kind of combination. Even a guy like John Franklin Myers was drafted by the Rams. You've got an interesting combination of these players who some guys like Willis and Phillips are bigger bodied edge guys who are going to, have their hand in the dirt, play a little more like 3 tech on pass rush downs. And then your more traditional 3-4 outside linebackers, guys like Jordan Jenkins, Terrell Basham. This team picks up Bryce Huff as an undrafted free agent. They draft Jabari Zuniga in the 3rd round. I actually think that Bryce Huff is a better player than Jabari. I had him much higher on my draft board, so if they just flipped those two, I would say good job. I think that this edge group is mostly just Greg Williams scheming these guys up, to be honest, because the talent here, other than Jordan Jenkins is like a low-end number 2, you're really talking about a bunch of role players, and it does hurt this team. Now, the pass rush here on the inside is a little better, so Henry Anderson's probably their best interior rusher. You would hope that Quinnen Williams can figure it out, because he was a dominant pass rusher at Alabama. He's just got to get back to it. Show that elite get-off and the ability to, get through guys as a pass rusher that he just hasn't shown it enough at the NFL level. They spent the 3rd overall pick on him. He cannot be just a run-defending defensive tackle. They need him to take a step up as a pass rusher. Folaranzu Fadukasi got after the quarterback a little bit. Nathan Shepard maybe could take a step up. The interior rush is not bad, but if you want to be a consistently good pass rush, you do need that edge presence, unless you have Aaron Donald, Chris Jones, Fletcher Cox. This team doesn't have that. Quinnen Williams maybe could get there, but I'm not going to project it in year 2 here after what we saw last year. So the pass rush ranks 30th. Like I said, you've basically just got a bunch of role players here and some good interior guys, but I do expect that this pass rush will hurt this defense and their ability to defend the pass. Now, I do like the linebacker room. They're going to rank 5th. Super deep group, maybe the deepest group of linebackers in the league. CJ Mosley is a kind of all-pro type of linebacker. Now, he's a little oversized for the modern game. He's not a great coverage player. He's good in zone. He's got length. He'll disrupt passes. He's not a liability in coverage. You're just not talking about Deion Jones or Bobby Wagner, these elite modern cover linebackers. Mosley's a little more of a throwback. I think it's a big reason Baltimore was prepared to let him go, but he's still an extraordinary linebacker and at a time was thought of as one of the best in the league. Maybe can kind of get healthy and be back to that because he's getting paid to be that player. But I do think some of that lack of quickness, hip flexion, burst, and movement skills in space due to his size do ultimately lower the bar as far as his coverage ability, and very similar with Avery Williamson. Now, these guys are both, Mosley and Williamson, full speed ahead, traditional Mike linebackers, stack, shed, light up the running back. Like, they are excellent run defenders, don't get me wrong, but just those two alone, not really much to speak of from a coverage standpoint. They're both fine. Like, I wouldn't say they're a liability in coverage, just not really making a difference. Now, Blake Cashman is a player that might be able to be a guy that can match running backs out of the backfield, tight ends, come in a little bit more in nickel packages, maybe relieve Avery Williamson of that duty. I love me some Blake Cashman. Now there's like some injury concerns. He's got short arms. I don't care. He runs a 4.5. He's super quick in space. He showed some great flashes last year, and his season was cut short due to injury last year as well. So this linebacker room really suffered from injuries last year. I think getting healthy this year, it is going to help this defense out quite a bit. And then you even have a Patrick Owasu, who they bring in from Baltimore to reunite with CJ Mosley. He could be just like what we described with Blake Cashman as more of a smaller cover linebacker. James Burgess played valiantly, but he's a backup that was kind of forced into action last year due to all these injuries. But awesome linebacker room. They're going to rank 5th in that group. And then the secondary actually ranked much higher than I expected. They've made some sneaky moves for this cornerback room that really struggled last year. And the first name I actually want to talk about here, who may or may not even start here, but Bleswan Austin. What a pick this was. I had him as a sleeper last year, but as like this, a 6th round dart throw, a guy that coming out of Rutgers was kind of your classic, like, okay, he's got the size threshold you look for and is a really good athlete, but just never really did anything at Rutgers because of injuries, and I want to even say off-field concerns. But the second he started here last year, he really fit the mold as a starting caliber corner, and I think he's going to be one of the bigger steals, especially of day 3 of the 2019 draft. And I want to bring him up first because he's the guy with the most upside in this group and a really interesting player that you want to know who he is. So that's Bleswan Austin. But it's not just him. They have a lot of sneaky players here that could round out one of the better secondaries in the league if everything can click here. So they bring in Pierre Desir, who was kind of a surprise release from the Colts. He earned a 3-year, $15 million contract after his performance in 2018, but really struggled last year. He gets released, and I will say that this team very clearly, I think Greg Williams wants to run a lot of zone coverage based on the bodies that they're bringing in. All these corners really are cover 3 zone corners. So I think we're going to see a lot of zone this year. So Desir and Austin definitely can run that scheme well as that traditional press cover 3 corner on the outside. But then you also have Bryce Hall, who I had a 2nd to a 3rd round grade on, maybe just a 2nd round grade. Most people did. He played that same scheme at Virginia at a very high level. His season was cut short due to injury, but a guy that entered the 2019 season with 1st round expectations. So a huge steal. Obviously has some injury questions, part of why he fell. He also is not the fastest guy, but this is one of those things, take with a grain of salt, but a little reminiscent of Richard Sherman, who was a 5th round pick for the Seahawks in that same scheme. So Bryce Hall, an excellent pick. Not just him, but you have Quincy Wilson, who they acquire from the Colts, who has played this same scheme. And then in the slot, you got Brian Poole, and Javelin Guidry was a phenomenal undrafted pickup. This team made some crazy good undrafted pickups between Javelin Guidry, who I would have taken in the 4th round. He's a speedster in the slot. I think he's going to be a player. I think he's got really high upside as a slot corner. Now, they do have Brian Poole here, who's himself one of the better slot corners in the league, but both these guys are kind of built like linebackers at their size, like 5'9", over 200 pounds. So definitely a good mentor for Javelin Guidry. But I love that pickup. We talked about Bryce Huff out of Memphis, who was, to me, one of the best power rushers in this class. And then they also pick up Lamar Jackson, the cornerback out of Nebraska, who is that lengthy press corner. And then Shyheim Carter is a player I liked as well as a late day 3 add for sort of a versatile, strong safety, nickel corner, dime corner hybrid player. Just a smart, instinctive player out of Alabama. And then you even have Arthur Mollett, who's started some games in this league and had some moments. So lots and lots of names. You can't really bring up too many secondaries in this league that have this many talented players at the cornerback position. So between the cornerback room and the offensive line, those are big weaknesses for this team from last year, but I love the general competition that they have in those groups. And I think you're going to emerge with starting caliber players at pretty much every spot. And then the safety room speaks for itself. This just might be the best safety room in the entire league. Jamal Adams is right there with Derwin James as the best safety in the NFL. The strong safety position, not your typical like Earl Thomas free safety, but a do-it-all player, part linebacker, slot corner, even played some edge last year. He can do everything. He is, like I like to say, one of those players that can flip the script on an offensive coordinator that they believe have a mismatch problem in the slot, whether it's a tight end like George Kittle, a big-bodied slot receiver like a Michael Thomas, or lining a Christian McCaffrey up in the short to intermediate game. Jamal Adams is one of a few players in this league that can say, I gotcha. And Greg Williams uses him so well. So don't trade Jamal Adams, New York. He is such an integral part of this defense. That'd be a costly mistake. Just pay the man, make it work. I think Joe Douglas is trying his best, but there's clearly some bad blood there. But as a Jets fan, I would be livid if we let him get out of the building. And then you got a really good free safety in Marcus May. Hasn't established himself as like some elite player, but he's really capable, rangy, typical free safety. I like him a lot. Now, they did draft Ashton Davis in the 3rd round. That very much could be like just a too good of a player to pass up, which I totally understand. Ashton Davis was my 3rd ranked safety in this class. I had a 2nd round grade on him, actually ahead of Xavier McKinney. I think there's just very few worlds where I don't see Ashton Davis being like a Marcus May, who ironically was my pro comp on my draft board for Ashton Davis. So he could actually phase out Marcus May if they pay Jamal Adams. Maybe they don't want to double up and have, $25 million invested in the safety room. I kind of get that if they want to do that. And I think Ashton Davis, just like Marcus May, is going to be a rangy, quality, well-balanced free safety that maybe will never be an elite player, but certainly a high-level starting caliber center fielding free safety who's a great complement to Jamal Adams. So that pick was amazing. That was probably my favorite pick of theirs. They had some good picks and free agent signings, but I love the Davis addition. And then they have Matthias Farley, who's a good safety, strong safety type of veteran presence there. And those are the only safeties they have on the roster, really. I mean, Bennett Jackson's kind of a slot corner hybrid type, but there's no need for a lot of depth here. Like, this is, and I can't think off the top of my head of a better safety room than right here with the New York Jets. So the secondary as a whole, when I really looked at this roster, surprised me. I think it's going to really be a good secondary, and if these corners come together, could be one of the best. So the defense as a whole is going to rank 17th. Like we said, that pass rush really drags this thing down, and I don't really see the bodies here other than Quinnen Williams becoming Geno Atkins here. I don't see the pass rush elevating to a point where this is going to be a consistently great defense. I think if you want to constantly match the best passing offenses in the league, just having the secondary figured out isn't going to be enough on a consistent basis. I think secondary is more important, but they have a natural relationship, and at some point you do got to consistently get after the quarterback, and I don't really see them doing that consistently enough here, barring Greg Williams dialing up consistently elite blitz packages, which I wouldn't put it past him. He's really good. So there is your roster review. We're going to wrap this thing up and take a look at the schedule here. It's actually not the worst schedule. Some of these lower teams, we've seen some pretty tough schedules. Their over-under is 7. I think that's part of this schedule not being that difficult. The start of it is pretty rough, though. At Buffalo, then San Francisco, at Indianapolis. I have them starting 0-3. But then they got Denver, Arizona. They go to the Chargers, which is a winnable game for them, and then Buffalo. If they could steal one at Buffalo or at Indianapolis and then really get this thing going, and then Darnold starts to heat up a little bit, that's going to be their path to kind of being a wild card sleeper playoff team, or even competing for this division, which I wouldn't completely rule out, even though I'm not going to predict it to happen. But then you got to go to Kansas City, and then a pretty winnable stretch. New England, they've got this doubleheader sort of thing with the bye week in between against the Dolphins. Very well could win both games against the Dolphins. And then you've got the Raiders coming to town. So that's kind of their window right there to heat up, but they need those wins if they want to make the playoffs here, because they got to go to Seattle, you got to go to the Rams, which is winnable, but I'm not going to pick that, and then Cleveland at home, at New England to wrap up the season. Overall, though, not the worst schedule. I've got them going 6-10 with a win range of 3-7. I would still say under. ultimately, it's just not a team that's earned that benefit of the doubt. I do kind of deep down find myself pulling for this team. It's not just that I like Sam Darnold. I like a lot of players on this team as well, and this is just a team that I think, especially their fans, like the Jets have great fans in my opinion, and they have just been miserable for a long time. I just want this thing to work out for them, and I'll be pulling for them, and I really hope I'm wrong about this 27th ranking, but I'm also pretty confident that this is pretty fair and about where they belong until proven otherwise. So there is your Jets deep dive. I hope you guys enjoyed. Please hit that like button down below. It really helps me out. Drop a comment who you think is going to be next. Cheers as always, and we'll see you for the next one. Peace out.